What happens if an army is forced to fight, not to destroy the enemy, but merely to keep its own tank alive? While everyone talks about how lethal it is, the great curtain of secrecy hidden in the depths of the Pentagon is being lifted. This is not just the story of a tank, but the story of asymmetric chaos. How did a wall of steel, manufactured with multi-billion-dollar budgets and rising to Titan status in desert storms, become a slave to its own logistics chain and turn into the easiest prey for cheap commercial technologies? With its armor that practically melted enemy missiles in mid-air, and its speed that whipped up storms on the front line, it was not merely a weapon, but a powerful display of global military dominance. But today, as the rules of warfare are being rewritten, there is a very dark question troubling the minds of military geniuses. These were the darkest times of the Cold War. The Western world was searching for a formula to counter the massive steel army of tens of thousands of tanks, waiting to invade the plains of Europe for the Soviet Union. The old generation of tanks was no longer enough. A radical, previously untried idea that upended military authorities emerged on the desk of the American military. This new monster would not run on old-school, noisy, and heavy diesel engines. It would derive its power from warplanes in the sky. A strange concept, isn't it? How could a tank derive its power from an airplane? Engineers placed a 1,500 horsepower jet turbine at the heart of the tank. This decision was seen as absolute madness in military circles. Why? Because this engine did not operate like a conventional tank engine. From the moment it started, it sucked in surrounding dust, sand, and air like a massive vacuum cleaner. But the advantage it brought was so immense that the Pentagon decided to play this gamble. This tank, unlike its rivals, was almost completely silent when running. Enemy positions could only perceive this massive force coming at them after it was too late. That is, after hearing the whistle of the tank shell from very close range. That is why it was given a nickname on the front line, Whispering Death. However, speed and silence were not enough. Armor was required that could withstand the deadly kinetic rounds of the Soviets. The Americans took a secret British technology, Chobham armor, and pushed it even further. The resulting armor was so dense that shells fired from enemy tanks practically turned to dust upon striking this shield. The engineers were proud. They had given the soldiers on the front line an impenetrable fortress. Right at this point, that immense protective shield spawned a crisis of its own. Every added uranium plate, every composite layer made the tank even heavier. The weight needle climbed first towards 60. This weight did not merely threaten the tank's speed, it turned geography into its enemy as well. Standard bridges became traps ready to collapse under this tonnage, while wetlands and muddy terrains became bogs waiting to swallow this steel giant. But how would this cumbersome hull survive in a real hell in the desert? The world would receive the answer to this question very soon in the scorching sands of the Middle East. The soil of Kuwait. Abrams was on stage to prove its true power. In the darkness of the night, during moments when the sandstorm blinded everything, while the tanks of the Iraqi army could see nothing, Abrams was able to move easily in the dark, thanks to its advanced thermal sights. Soviet tanks were being hit one by one from miles away, before they could even get into range. In one instance, an Abrams that took 3 direct hits continued fighting with only minor scratches on its armor and destroyed the enemy that struck it with a single shot. This victory created a dangerous illusion in the military world. It was believed that Abrams was invincible and that no force could stand against it. However, this success demonstrated not the tank's lack of flaws, but the enemy's technological inadequacy. The real crisis would arise not against a regular army, but in urban combat dominated by narrow streets, invisible improvised explosive devices, and chaos. And when that moment arrived, the Pentagon would experience a massive shock. There was no longer a regular armored unit before it. The war had moved to the place tanks disliked most, urban areas. These multi-million-dollar tanks were becoming targets for old Soviet rockets, costing a few $100s, launched from the upper floors of buildings, because Abrams's famous uranium armor protected only the front of the tank. The Pentagon urgently developed armor packages to reduce casualties in the city. The tank became even heavier, even more unwieldy. But the truly fatal blow would come not from the sands of the Middle East, but from the cold skies of Eastern Europe. Battlefields evolved. By the mid-2020s, a threat emerged that was unimaginable during the era when tank designs were drawn up: unmanned aerial vehicles and f.p.v. drones. The Abrams sent to the front lines, when lacking an air shield to protect them, remained completely helpless against these small, cheap killers coming from the sky. Today, instead of scrapping the Abrams legend, the Pentagon is seeking to reinvent it completely, because they know that the era of heavy armor is over. The current era is one of lightness, artificial intelligence integration, and active protection systems. Abrams must evolve by learning from its own mistakes and the heavy blows it received. Otherwise, it will not escape remaining in the dusty pages of military history as a steel dinosaur crushed under its own weight and logistics. Because the history of warfare has taught us one more thing: even the strongest armor is doomed to melt in the face of changing times and cheap intellect. True invincibility is hidden not in the thickness of the armor, but in the flexibility of the strategy.